So, what do we say to citizens not only here at home in the United States, but in countries that have experienced terrorism repeatedly about how we can combat terrorism, how we can live in a free and open society, both for our own physical safety and also our civil liberties?
Let me say that there are plenty of people who live constantly under the threat of terrorism. If you want to find them, go to Yemen or North Waziristan, where people don't have to be told about terrorism. They are constantly in fear that 5 minutes from now, the guy across the street is going to be blown away along with anybody else who happens to be around. That's massive global terrorism. And it has repercussions. And we're seeing some of the repercussions. What happened in Brussels was a monstrous terrorist act, but it's worth looking at the explanation that was given for it. ISIS took credit for it and issued a statement which basically said, as long as you keep bombing us, we're going to respond by attacking you. There's something to that. There's a real problem, but the answer, and we have to make a decision as to how to deal with it. One decision we can make is to follow the playbook that Al-Qaeda and ISIS have presented and want us to follow. Namely, and they're very explicit about it. Destroy your own societies, destroy your own freedom and liberty, and get into a war with the Muslim world. That's their playbook. We can accept that if we like. We've been doing it for 15 years. If you go back 15 years to the launching of the so-called war on terror, terrorism, what we call terrorism, was located in a tiny area of tribal areas of what we call Afghanistan and Pakistan. Where is it now? All over the world. Every time you hit it with a sledgehammer, it expands. The invasion of Iraq, for example, one of the effects was that in the year following it, terrorism increased by a factor of 7. Intelligence agencies had predicted that it would lead to more terror, but it was way beyond. And that continues. There's another possibility, and that is to try to get to the roots and the causes of it and try to deal with them. It's not dramatic and exciting, but it would work. And there's plenty of research that tells us why people turn to terrorism. Take Brussels or Paris. The terrorist acts are carried out by people who lived and grew up there in slums, miserable suburbs, young people who lived with humiliation, degradation, no hope, some from countries in North Africa where they'd been subjected to brutal European atrocities for centuries. Young people who wanted something in their lives. They wanted some dignity, some hope, some excitement, something to look forward to. They were not going to find it in their own societies. So most of them had very little background in Islam. They picked up Islam. This gave them a cause, okay? We can increase that by following the ISIS playbook, or you could look at the causes for it and try to deal with them. Take a look at the British in Northern Ireland. Terrorism in England was pretty serious for a long time, much more than it is now. Fortunately, they didn't react by carpet bombing Northern Ireland, following Ted Cruz's proposal. They finally, after a long period of doing the wrong thing, reacting with violence, they began to consider the reasons and the causes and to deal with them. And didn't turn into a paradise, but it's a big difference. I was in Belfast in 1993, and it was a war zone, literally. I was there 15 years later. You could see tensions, but it was a pretty normal city. And some of the people who had been hitmen for the IRA were now part of the negotiating teams. That's the way you deal with it if you want to end the terrorism. If you want to follow the playbook outlined by Osama bin Laden and his successors, then hit it with a sledgehammer.